So everyone, Hank Nuwer is our guest today. Hank is a retired professor emeritus from Franklin College. Hank and I worked together a million years ago at West Quad here at Ball State University in the Department of Journalism. He's gone on to write, what, 4 books now on hazing?
5 on hazing, and then
5 on hazing.
21 other books. Yeah, quite a bit.
He is prolific and just has such great insight on how to be a writer. And I thought he would be really a great addition for all of you as you think through your, your upcoming assignments. And we're going to pay a little attention to column writing. He's writing a column for his local newspaper right now. That's on the list, but he does so many more things. And so I won't go on and on about him, but I'm just delighted that you could join us. Thanks very much. And I'll let you start. You were talking about what you're working on right now, which falls right into the kind of work that students are doing.
Okay. Yeah, it's kind of interesting having 1 column a week, and it keeps me kind of on a schedule. When I'm just doing books, I can forget what day of the week it is. And then it can get frantic where you're doing 8 or 10 different interviews. But with this column, I try to do a humorous one week and then a serious one the next week. This one was so interesting for me. You just take the premise, how does someone who's like one of the best bass players turn around and have a heroin addict, become a heroin addict? And what was interesting is I found comments from Rick Derringer, who's from Union City, and he talked about how they were able to handle the drug issues, that it didn't go too far. This was when they were in their 20s. And out of that whole group, 2 died out of about 6. So that was kind of interesting to me, how someone gets caught up in it. So that was kind of a starting point, and then putting in the facts and then comments on what a great bass player he was, trying to put this all together in story fashion. And I guess that was what I was going to start with. Anybody can get facts. Putting them in order is important, but also telling a story as you're doing it, or it's just going to turn people off. And this is kind of interesting because a column, I had studied Latin when I was in high school and also in college, has to start in the middle of things. You have to grab people from the very beginning. And I think young writers believe you have to go in chronological order. You read Kurt Vonnegut or any other Black humorist of that way, you'll see that he starts right in the middle of things. So let me throw that out to the class. How do you find your most exciting moment to grab a reader? Anyone?
I usually try to find it like in the hook, just like right out of the beginning. I feel like if you get sort of a weak start, then you're just going to kind of lose their interest.
Yeah, and then you don't even have a conclusion, because I like to tie that whole story together in a big bow. Start away, grab them, and then, just like in a movie, the ending has to be really satisfying, but not predictable. If you do an ending that ties into the beginning, but the reader saw it coming, they're going to be disappointed. Does that make sense? Yeah. So tell me how you try to tie in your beginning and your endings.
I guess sort of just like making some kind of like a common reference, or like maybe a catchy, like a phrase or something like that you can then refer to sort of at the end, I think is sort of like impactful. Okay, all right. Anyone else? What are some of your thoughts about how you begin, how you end?
Well, I think the point you were making, I took a class last fall that was sports writing, and we were doing like objective things as well as a feature was like the final thing. And the entire semester, he was always talking about circular storytelling, which kind of reminds me exactly what you were saying. And kind of like Sam was saying, either a phrase or just like a theme, and make sure that that theme or phrase, whatever you're relating the story to, is just brought on completely throughout the story so the reader can just remember that. And then, like you said, especially bring it up at the end as well. So
Okay, that's perfect. And I don't know if I have it here. I also write fiction. Thought I had it here, but in doing that, trying to repeat it, it's called a leitmotif. And it's interesting to me how nonfiction and fiction really kind of tie together in terms of the methods. There's facts, but that's not enough. And you try to get very descriptive words, like you said. If I say that the pH of water in a polluted river is this, and I give you a number, I'm going to turn you off. But if I say you're drinking from water that's just like turpentine or just like vinegar, you've got an image. And so reading your thing all the way through, I think, is crucial. Okay, so there's another point I want to make that I just came up with this morning. Upstairs, I was reading a review of a book, and then, just for the fun of it, I looked at, this was from last week, and then this week there were letters to the editor. What happened is that the writer in the review called this movie director's mother monstrous. So the surviving son, Billy Wilder was the director. The surviving son wrote in a long letter about his mother, how she had gotten through Nazi Germany, how her parents had been killed, her husband had died, and how she had no skills and had to try to type and do things to get through. So he said, we were not the easiest of kids growing up in New York City with a German accent. So she wasn't monstrous. The writer apologized. And for me, one single word can destroy a column or so. And my one example, I did an investigative piece on a college president at Cedar Crest College in Pennsylvania. My editor caught a single word, authoritarian, because that could have got me sued on my butt. You know, one single word. What did I do instead? Described his behavior. And hopefully you, the reader, is going to get the same opinion. Rather, opinion writing is important, but it's better if the reader comes to a conclusion rather than you nail it home, okay? How about some others? How do you feel about the importance of a single word? Do you read your piece all the way through? Do you do a lot of cutting? Maybe somebody else that I haven't heard from? Yeah. I'll just pick the man who's got the letters on his chest. Black baseball cap. Yes, sir. And could you give me your names too at the beginning? Again, I'm Hank.
Yeah, my name is Garrett. Could you repeat the question one time? I'm sorry, I need to get that again.
Okay, yeah, so I was going for the North Face one. In terms of your writing, do you go through every single word? Do you find at the end that you have to do some cutting because you read it in your mind a different way from the way a reader is going to get it? Maybe someday you're calling your girlfriend or so and you're reading it to her and you're going, she's not getting it. Do you ever do that?
Yeah, typically I'll go through and I'll look at each graph that I wrote through to see if anything sticks out to me that maybe I could fix. And then once everything is finished, I go through it again and make sure it maintains that same flow throughout.
Okay. Anybody ever get scared to death by a blank page when you're starting? What's that feeling? Especially for me, if I procrastinate and I got the damn column due this day and I put it off till this morning, that's kind of scary.
Yeah, it can be intimidating for sure.
Julie, how do you get around that? You got a blank page in front of you, you got a deadline?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, I mean, I find the best approach when you have a writer's block is, you know, maybe you need to get up and walk down the hall or around the block, get some fresh air, but then you got to just sit down and put words on paper. Right? You got to start somewhere. Oftentimes, you know, I found that when I can't think of something to say, it's because I haven't done enough work. I haven't done enough homework. I haven't done enough research.
Yeah.
You know, so, I mean, a really good interview inspires me. I can't wait to write. I can't wait to start getting words out. It just feels like it's coming. Whereas if I have an interview that's sort of a dud that just didn't really inspire me, I have a harder time.
Okay, I like that. So let me throw you at the piece I'm working on now. What would interest you in a character, let's say like Rick Derringer, who was not just a one-hit wonder, but mainly known as a one-hit wonder, but really hit it off as a producer? I mean, he worked with some of the best musicians of the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, and he's still doing it at 77 years old, in part because he needs money. He went bankrupt once and so on. What would interest you about this particular person if you were doing a column?
I'd personally, oh, sorry, Jake. I'm a big fan of music, so I'd like to take the point of view of like, he's done all these different things and like why he does different things rather than just sticking with the same kind of sound, I guess, if he's going with all these different things. I don't know too much about Rick Derringer, but.
No, but this is interesting. It's not as sexy or as glamorous to write about producing a record as it is to actually be singing or to be in a band or to go to concerts. How would you handle one if I gave you one on someone who is strictly a producer of records?
I would probably, I don't know, it's tough because producing isn't as interesting to most people, I guess. So I think you'd have to try and find what he loves about producing and write the column around that.
Okay, I like that. For me, it would be to be in the same room with him during a business meeting, be a fly on the wall, not to participate. That's been really useful for me. For example, I wanted to see what it was like to write a play while it already had started, a play that fell apart. This was in Chicago. The play was Bleacher Bums. Trying to think of the guy's name. He went on to Hollywood, but sitting there, I saw a very different way of looking at something. And so for me, immersion is really important in writing a column. If you have to phone it in, you do it, but can you see there's no excuse for being there in the room and experiencing it yourself? Because then you can create scenes in your column and the reader feels like he or she is there. Otherwise, if you're phoning, I think you've got much more of a challenge. Okay. Anyone else? How would you do a story on a producer? A lot more.
Well, I thought, you pointed out how he had been doing this for a really long time. And I assume probably early on he enjoyed it. Obviously, those lawyers and he pursued it. And now you say he only does it for money, pretty much. I would see, how his mindset has changed over the years, especially from what I said from his earlier years where he probably enjoyed it to now where he probably sees it more as a chore than anything else.
Yeah, I think part of it is he'll take anything that comes along because the offers aren't there the way they were when he was 20, 30, 40 at this stage. But his love for the music is there. So I did find one interview for him when he said, the music he likes the best has a strong narrative line, a strong storyline. And so maybe I would try to find out what albums he's done that really were satisfying to him. And the opposite, what did you do that you felt like you sold your soul, but made some money in this? So put some tension that's in there. Okay, I put down a couple of notes over here. Okay, I'm going to try to give you guys an assignment. Do you have a pencil there, paper, or a computer right in front of you? You take a second to do that.
They can also use the chat room if you want. If you want everybody to see what's going on.
Okay.
Everybody can turn on chat and type messages.
Yeah, I don't get to do a lot of Zoom, by the way, so it's funny. So I'm kind of learning as we go here.
Do you see a chat room down there at the bottom of the screen, Hank? It looks like a little.
Oh, yeah, I see it. Uh-huh.
Okay, if you
click on that.
You could click on that and you could type in
Oh, I see it. Okay, got it.
and everybody will see it.
Okay. So what we're going to do here is to take an experience that all of us have had in common. And I just tried to pick the most embarrassing experience that you had in high school, and then to try to pretend that we're starting a first draft. And I want you to pack this beginning, this memoir, with vivid details and make it sensory. And I want you to transport me as the reader to that moment of time. So let me give you the one that if I were writing it now. I started writing at age 16 for the Buffalo News columns, sports at that time. And it was really important to me because at age 15, I was expelled from school. And I'd been into so many fights that no school would take me. No Catholic school definitely would take me. And my father was taking me from school to school until we finally found one. And I got interviewed and he said, well, I'm the baseball coach. Do you play baseball? Oh, thank God. And so I finally got into a school, and my father at one point said, I hope that you're proud of yourself because we're not. So now we go to that high school moment. Why I was expelled was not only for the fights that had happened, but I got caught in a classroom with somebody's, on family day, with somebody's sister by the rector. That particular indent, which does not translate well when you go home and have to tell them why you're expelled, especially at the seminary. So that was the end of my priesthood, the end of this, but the beginning of writing, because I wound up going to another school. A teacher liked the writing and got me working for the newspaper. Okay, so you can see how I would try to start with that. How would, let me ask you the question first. What would my first sentence try to convey? Am I trying to convey telling my parents? Am I trying to convey that experience of getting caught in the classroom and then the brother trying to kill me over the top and the mother screaming? How would you do it? What would grab you?
I don't know exactly like what I would say, but I think most importantly, I would say like the however you felt in that moment to like
Oh.
make the readers feel the exact same way you felt. So they're kind of in your shoes and then like go from there.
Okay, so for me, that door swinging open and the Monsignor walking in is one of those, I could probably capture that at that particular time. I like that. What else? What about somebody else? What would grab you?
I would convey like what is going through your mind at this time, like how many different things are you thinking about? I just got caught doing this. What are my parents going to think? How do I feel right now? How embarrassed am I? Her brother wants to kill me, all these different things that are going through your mind, and just kind of convey the reader how crazy your headspace is at that time.
Okay, and there's one I didn't tell you. So I had to take a bus. I jumped from the seminary to the end of the line, went back again to the seminary, back again. I wouldn't get off the bus. Finally, the bus driver screeched the brakes, came to the back and said, what? What are you doing? And I explained it to him. And he took the turn and dropped me off in front of my house, a city bus driver, because I was so terrified of going in, to tell me. So I like that one. And now let's put it into yours. Come into a horrific moment from high school specifically, and let's have a lead, okay? Don't tell me what it is going to be. Your lead has to grab us.
So do you want those written down, or we're going to just talk about
No,
them?
written down. Let's
Okay,
see if
so
we can
can everybody just use the chat box? This is a couple of sentences that describe a moment in time
yeah,
from
a couple
high school.
sentences. Okay.
Make them sensory. We're creating a scene here.
Okay.
Anybody in that? See anybody in the chat box? Is it because you're not sure?
Okay, I'll start that way. So that way. Julie, you going to try to do one also?
I'm doing one, yeah.
All right. Okay, I like the onomatopoeia there. Clicking and clanking, you got onomatopoeia. Okay, now is that all right if I give a direction?
Yeah,
Forget the angered, go back, because that's telling us, try to show us instead of angered. So keep everything but the verb.
Ah.
Do you see what I was saying on that? Okay. I like, Clayton, I like yours. You do me one favor? Would you break that into 2 sentences? Because we're talking column now, this would be perfect for feature. Try this one in 2 sentences.
Remember, everybody, you're just writing a sentence or two describing a moment in time.
Okay. Julie, what if you did this as it clicked and clanked instead of passing, as it clicked and clanked? Okay. So I see I can go up on the right. This is my first time doing this. Okay, let's look at Sam's. It was mid-conversation backstage during open night of our school musical. It's a great lead. It's really specific. It took only seconds for me to hear my voice echoing through the house over the audience. I think I would take out the word only. And I think every word matters. I would change it to a most frightful sound instead of the most frightful. Okay. A most frightful. I like it. So is this like the microphone's on and you didn't?
Yes. Yep. Mic'd up and just talking backstage, and then everyone was listening to me. That was wonderful.
Oh, that's neat. I was speaking at the University of Texas and I ran into the bathroom and a student ran after me and said, "Shut it off when you go in there." Well, thank you. That would be worse than your voice.
Oh, yes.
I like it. Okay, but that's really good. Any other opinions, guys? Let's look at his. Look at Sam's. Blake, could you start us off? Take a look at Sam's.
Yeah. Do you just want me to read it?
No, yeah. And what's your question? You're buying this piece. You're an editor, right? You're buying it. What do you like? What would you still want?
I mean, as far as what I'd like, he really seems to set the scene well. I mean, like I can just kind of imagine myself in his shoes, as I read. maybe a little bit more clarity, I guess, in terms of like the outcome, I guess.
Okay, okay. It was the musical started already? That's a good point. Had the musical started already?
Yeah, I was just in the middle of a scene.
Okay. I think I would get that in there, that it already had started, because then it makes it, it's not like the orchestra isn't out there yet or something.
Mhm.
Yeah, I like that. So Blake, good catch. Okay, let's look at Blake's, and Sam, could you read Blake's aloud, and let's see.
I wish the Oreo I threw hit anyone in the face except for my teacher. Unfortunately for me, this was not the case. Nice. Yeah, I like it. I think that,
Do we need the second sentence?
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah, you got a heck of one there. I wish the Oreo threw hit anyone in the face except for my teacher.
You could make the case that that's implied, right?
Yeah, I think you got a great first sentence that grabs us, Blake, and I think you can go right into the story. I still remember I tried to hit Vince Gidzinski in the face with a snowball, and Father Belzer walked in at the seminary, and it hit on top of a ledge and fell like an ice cream cone on top of his head. So everybody can remember that particularly. I used to get in trouble a lot. So, but I love this. I wish the Oreo I threw hit anyone in the face except for my teacher. So Blake, just tell us, what can you jump into with specific details? Don't write it, just tell us.
Well, I mean, I could talk about like her reaction because she was like the strictest teacher in the school. So like I could talk about how like she sprinted over to me, yelling at me, and grabbed me by the arm and like got in my face.
Okay, I like that. And here's the funny part. When I read this, I pictured a male teacher. Probably because I had gone into a Catholic school, which was all male, right? So I had pictured a male. So that second sentence, we're going to have a her or a she in it, or Miss Smith or whatever it is. We'll need that in the second sentence. And then we've got some continuity. Okay. Let's see. I'm trying to scroll down here for Jake's.
Can you?
Oh,
You're
man.
not, you see it?
Yeah, I'm having trouble scrolling here. Hold on. Let's see. Ah, there's my bar. Okay, so Brandon, could you take Jake's?
Yeah. As me and my friend sat in the principal's office, I could feel the tension in the air and the disappointment on his face. I had never brought myself to cheat on an assignment before. What I like about it is that it's relatable. I think that a lot of people can kind of feel that way, so to have that in the beginning would be pretty good.
Yeah, I like it a lot. I think just the second one, I'd go in and try to delete a couple of words saying, I had never cheated on an assignment before. Or I had never before cheated on an assignment. Then we got that tough last word, assignment. Jake, what do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, I think that could work pretty well. It's a little bit more concise, a little bit more to the point. You know, I think the big thing that I want to get across is the feeling I had, because, you know, I'd never done this before. I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know what I'm thinking, you know, so I want to build the feeling, you know, how it feels in the room, because nothing has been said yet. So it's all anticipation, you know.
Okay, so now I'll give you the hardest question. How are we going to end this? Are we going to have a life's lesson for today? You know, take us through where this is going. You got a great story here, and actually, this is definitely a column. Where are you going to go with it?
You know, I think that definitely could turn into a life lesson, maybe a what I learned or what you can learn from this, or I haven't done it since, something like that. You know, starting to go into detail about how the situation did play out, what the principal did say, you know what I'm saying? Just kind of how it turned out for me, and a little bit of how it'll turn out for you if you do it. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, and I think maybe the worst part of this is how disappointed you are in yourself, right? When this kind of stuff goes, or for me, disappointing my dad, which was a big deal, for me. But it's different for everybody, and your words have to bring it out to us.
Something like disappointment in the principal had in me could never match the disappointment I had in myself.
Perfect. And that's about your second or third paragraph. And then we go into this life's lesson. Okay. I have one that was a column just last year. I talked about, and my father, again, meant a lot to me. He was kind of a war hero. He died young. And I went fishing, and my friends were catching all the big fish. And today I love fishing, still go with my sons just about every month. But I struck out that day. And my friend, Frank Swiniarski, was making fun of me. So I went to get away with him, and I found the biggest catfish in the world washed up dead. And so I showed it off to Swiniarski. I was the hero. He was kind of the villain that day. And I took it home. I was just going to throw it away. My father was so proud, nailed it to a board, showed me how to cook a catfish. And I have to say, us hardened criminals really hold out for a while. We put it on a fry pan, and it was when it was bubbling and sizzling that I finally said, I didn't catch that fish. What? And so that was about 9 o'clock at night. And he'd made me walk it all the way back to the lake and put it back into the water. I had to go over railroad tracks. And that one life lesson really stayed with me for a while. And so again, here, what are we doing? We're talking stories, right? Okay, so now tell me some other stories. Is it going to be, did you tell your parents?
Yes, I'm pretty sure I did, yeah.
Yeah, and so their reaction is kind of important. How did the principal act?
He was understanding. He allowed me to, at least give my story, whatever one that it was. It was kind of a long time ago. It didn't end with like, I still got a 0 for the assignment, of course, but no further action was taken. It was kind of like a, don't do this again. Next time this won't happen. Something like
that. So in a way you got off, but not easy.
Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah, but you know what the consequences could have been, and could have stopped you from going to college, for example. Okay, all right, so let's take, it's Grace.
I think Brandon's up next.
Brandon, oh, okay, Brandon.
I revised it, and it's at the new one's at the bottom.
At the bottom, okay. I have a stubborn computer. It doesn't want to get the black line. Okay. Brandon, is it I heard the chorus members?
Yep.
Okay. So Taylor, could you read that for us? Taylor there?
I'm sorry. Yes, I'm here.
Taylor, could you read Brandon's for us?
Brandon's, okay. I heard the chorus members sing and dance as I lied on the floor of a recently built stage and wondered how to go on with the show. Okay. So.
We'll probably have to change lied to lay. So as I lay on the floor of a recently built stage. So take it for us. You're buying this piece. You're the editor.
So I heard the chorus members sing and dance as I lied on the floor of a recently built stage and wondered how to go on with the show. Okay, so I'm guessing that this might be one of your first shows that you encountered in high school. Or obviously, actually it's the stage that's the most important thing, I believe, in this lead. I don't know, like what should I say? I'm not sure. I don't know.
Okay. Well, I kind of wanted this to, so we know that from before that you had said something over the mic, right?
Right.
Okay. So in that second paragraph, could we find out what you actually said?
I think that was Sam.
Oh, is that Sam's?
Yeah, that was a different.
Oh, that was
It's
different. I'm
Brandon.
sorry.
So we want to know what happened here. What is it that you're
Yeah.
describing? I think.
Uh,
Brandon.
So what happened was I fell during a song,
Oh,
and I didn't really know what to do.
Okay.
And it was during a performance, so I just kind of laid there for a second. figuring it out.
oh,
Delay.
I guess
okay.
it could be more detailed.
Okay.
Yeah. I get what you're saying now, though.
Yeah.
Explain that. Okay. So yeah, just a little bit more detail, I guess. Maybe like highlight the embarrassment that you had rather than you just saying, you know, you just laid on the floor, because that could be even a performance wise, not just you being embarrassed.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So
Okay, how about this one, Taylor? I heard the chorus members sing and dance as I lay on the floor, period. I wondered how to go on with the show.
yes, that sounds better, because honestly, I feel as though it's more like desperation or like despair. Like I hear more of a, because you had an end to it. So that's how you felt. And then the next step is like, I don't know what to do next. So, you know, if you understand what I'm sort of saying.
Yeah, you do. And here's the thing. Is it relevant that it was recently built?
Right. That's another thing, because I was more focused on the stage rather than you as the person.
Yes, and we can all picture a stage in our mind. Okay,
Right.
perfect. Okay. So Brandon, could you read Taylor's?
Yeah. My hands and face had become numb within a matter of seconds. Each heavy breath forced my chest to become tighter.
Ooh, good writing.
Yeah, that's gripping. It kind of makes me want to know like what's happening, and
Yeah,
it's
it does.
it's a good setup.
Yeah, it's
Thank you.
yeah.
So it was really about my first anxiety attack that I had in high school. It was crazy. Like it was really scary. So like that's really what the first sentence was, me just showing that like, oh my God, my body became numb. Like this is honestly like the worst feeling that you can have.
Yeah.
So
It's definitely sensory.
yeah.
Heavy breath instead of each breath. For this time, the adjective really works, that it's a heavy breath.
Right.
Okay, let me, I'm asking you this, not telling you. What if we took out a matter of? My hands and face had become numb within seconds.
Right.
Yeah?
I was gonna say that. I wasn't sure if you were gonna pick that out or not. But,
Okay. Yeah, because we don't really need that phrase right in there. Okay. All right. Okay. So Taylor, could you read Grace's?
Grace's? Yes, I can. Let me see. Where's Grace? Okay. It is supposed to be the best night of our lives. Prom is supposed to be magical. Dressed in a pink gown, my red face was the center of attention.
Ah.
So I know what it's about, especially head on. I think it's fine.
Okay.
I guess you could just express a little bit more emotion rather than, because, well, I mean, you are saying my red face was the center of attention. So it's obviously showing that you were sort of embarrassed, or, you know, you weren't at your best at the moment. Grace, I'm not sure.
No, I like it. Where's Grace? Grace, I'm going to try to do one thing here. You've got two words repeated, that is supposed. What if we did this? What if we combined 1 and 2 and we put prom is supposed to be magical, comma, the best night of our lives?
Yeah, I like that.
Do you like it?
Yeah.
Okay, so we do that. Can we break the dressed in a pink gown into a separate sentence? And then my red face was the center of attention. So we've got only one sentence at the beginning. Can you change dressed in a pink gown to a complete sentence, then leave as a complete sentence, my red face was the center of attention. So basically you're fleshing out dressed in a pink gown into a sentence. Okay, can you do that?
You doing that now, Grace?
Wait, am I getting rid of supposed again when it says, okay, so am I saying it is supposed to be the best night of our lives, prom is,
Yeah, so if you say prom is supposed to be magical, comma, the best night of our lives, and you're leaving my red face was the center of attention, then you're making a complete sentence out of dressed in a pink gown. Okay, so you're trying to bring me and the rest of the people into this situation. Because once you tighten it, I think you've got a heck of a lead.
I agree.
okay. What about, I said prom is supposed to be magical, the best night of our lives. My red face overshadowed my pink gown.
You just nailed it, I think. I think you really nailed it. Okay, now what happened? Don't leave us in the dark.
I was like a baseball manager, and all the like baseball people were taking pictures with their dates, and I was the only one who didn't have a date. And I took pictures with my teacher, and it was just like horrific, and everyone was like looking at me, and no one wanted to take pictures with their teacher at prom. And I didn't know what to do, and I tried to get out of it, and I think he thought he was being helpful, but he just made it worse.
Oh boy. Okay. I think you've got a nice piece there, and it's not something that's happened to all of us, but we could feel being in your shoes here. Okay, so I have a couple of notes here. Let me get a couple things here. Okay, so the tip is this: you need to collapse your characters and events into a life. Cutting out unnecessary details is so critical. And in this one, for example, the prom, the teacher is important, and maybe one of the ball players, maybe someone that you would have liked to have impressed or something like that, but you can't put all the ball players in. You know, so compressing is really important as a tip. The next one over here, simplicity. If you don't mind, I'm going to try to read a middle of a column. This is by Ernie Pyle. Anyone know who he was by any chance? Indiana University's journalism is named for him. He was a great correspondent in World War II because he went to the front. He got in the middle of everything. Interesting enough, his marriage was failing apart. His wife had an alcohol problem, and going back home was miserable. It was more comfortable for him to be at the front. And then he died almost on the last day of World War II in Japan. He got a bullet through the head from a sniper as he peered over a rock. And millions of people lamented his death. So I'm going to read you this column if I can. And don't put the notes on the side, but for me, why would you buy this piece as an editor? What's most compelling to you? Again, this is only a part of a column. What is it you like? What more would you want? Okay. Captain Waskow was a company commander in the 36th Division. He had been in this company since long before he left the States. He was very young, only in his middle 20s, but he carried in him a sincerity that made people want to be guided by him. And then it's cutting down. I was at the foot of the mule trail the night they brought Captain Waskow down. The moon was nearly full, and you could see far up the trail, and even partway across the valley. Soldiers made shadows as they walked. Dead men had been coming down the mountain all evening, lashed onto the backs of mules. They came belly down across the wooden back saddle, their heads hanging down on the left side of the mule, their stiff legs sticking awkwardly from the other side, bobbing up and down as the mule walked. The Italian mule skinners were afraid to walk beside dead men, so Americans led the mules down that night. Even the Americans were reluctant to unlash the bodies when they got to the bottom, so an officer had to do it and ask others to help. Then a soldier came into the cowshed and said there were more bodies outside. The soldiers who led them stood there waiting. "This body is Captain Waskow," one of them said. Two men unlashed the body from the mule and lifted it off and lay it in the shadow beside the stone wall. Other men took the other bodies off. Finally, there were 5 lying end to end in a row. You don't cover up dead men in combat zones. They lie there in the shadows until someone else comes after them. The mules moved off to the olive groves. The men in the road seemed reluctant to leave. They stood around, and gradually I could sense them moving one by one close to Captain Waskow's body. Not so much to look, I think, as to say something in finality to him. I stood close by and I could hear. One soldier came and looked down and he said out loud, "God damn it." Another one came and he said, "Damn it to hell anyway." He looked down for a few last moments and then turned and left. Another man came, an officer. It was hard to tell officers from men in the dim light, for everybody was grimy and dirty. The men looked into the dead captain's face and then spoke directly to him, as if he were alive. "I'm sorry, old man." Then a soldier came and stood beside the officer and bent over, and he too spoke to the dead captain, not in a whisper, but awfully tender. And he said, "I sure am sorry, sir." Then the first man squatted down, and he reached down and took the captain's hand, and he sat there for a full 5 minutes, holding the dead hand in his own and looking into the dead face. And he never uttered a sound all the time. Finally, he put the hand down. He reached up and gently straightened the points of the captain's shirt collar, and he sort of rearranged the tattered edges of his uniform around the wound. And then he got up and walked away down the road in the moonlight all alone. Okay. Julie, I'll pick on you first. What's some of your reaction?
Well, you picked my favorite column of all time. So, this is to me is the quintessential column. It hits all the right points. He is descriptive in every way, highly sensory. Not just, he teaches us how to use our skills of observation. And that's my biggest takeaway is that, he didn't do a lot of interviewing here. He just listened and watched and then wrote, right?
And we felt we were sitting with him, right?
Absolutely. You picture these mules, the bodies belly down, you can tell that this is, the sun is setting. It's the end of a long, hard day, and here's this, and even describing Captain Waskow, a young man, he was in charge of all these soldiers, and here he was 20-something, but a captain of this crew. So, right. The level of detail in this is really significant and one of his very best, for sure.
And for me, we've all read war stories. We've all go to the movies. We've seen them. This is a different aspect. Grace, what about for you? Is it a different way of looking at war?
Oh, absolutely. And I guess that's why, that's one of the reasons that he was so effective as a correspondent. He was so relatable. He knew these men and he could describe them. He ate with them, he slept with them, he was in battle with them. It immersed, embedded in the war with these men. And, to your point, nothing replaces just being there. Even if you're interviewing someone in the room, you want to, if you want to see what's the discussion like about producing a record, right? Same concept, I think. He's able to make some observations that there's just no other way you would get that.
Okay. Taylor, let me jump to you. Taylor, what was it about him straightening the collar and fixing the wound, the shirt, that really kind of grabs us?
That just shows, like, I guess you could say, like, the battle scar, like, that he was affected, but at the end of the day, he still straightened himself up and realized the most important task at hand.
Okay. I like that a lot. Brandon, it's not usual for most of us men to be able to hold a hand or something at this point in death. Why does that grab us so much?
I think just that description shows how much that captain meant to everybody.
Yeah.
Especially the one that was holding his hand.
Yeah. And he didn't want him to go into that other world.
Mm-hmm. Still holding on.
Yeah, the family wasn't there. The mother wasn't there. He's going into the ground right after this. It's such a human moment. Okay. So what I had in mind, I guess, for Julie, for the last part, I'd asked if you wanted to write questions down. Should we jump into that a little bit, or?
Yeah, let's jump into that. We've got about really just 6 or so minutes or so to go. You've read half a dozen pieces or so by Hank. What are some of your questions?
And I brought one thing here. So we're doing column writing, but mainly what I do is feature writing. This is the magazine I was with full time, Inside Sports. There are two 7,500 word pieces in here. A pitcher named Ron Guidry and a Oklahoma basketball player who later played for the Pacers, named Wayman Tisdale. And so it's interesting. I think that you've got to be able to write a 750 word column, but a 7,500 word piece if you want to make a living at this. And that's what I'm doing right now, is living off of my writing. So I think being versatile enough to do the short pieces, but the longer ones also is critical.
So some questions are popping up in the chat room here. I'm just going to read them to make it a little easier.
Okay.
So Sam's asking, I think your style is really unique and interesting. Do you make conscious style choices in each piece, or is it just a natural way for you to write?
Oh, there is no natural way of writing. For me, I didn't start this way at age 16. You have to find out what consciously is the voice that you're trying to come across with. I couldn't write the way Ernie Pyle writes. A lot of my pieces have humor in it, or black humor or dark humor in it. And this question is so multifaceted. The mass audiences, it really varies from audience to audience. This one here for Inside Sports was different from Gentleman's Quarterly, was different from Outside. It did a lot of outdoor kinds of pieces, which was different from the airline magazines. So this is a great question. Every audience is different, and yet you have to sound like yourself. And I always encouraged my students when I used to teach to read the people that they would like to write like, but don't imitate them, but be able to say what it is that they like about it. Because when I started off, I had these idols, Hunter Thompson and a few others, and tried to write with that style and wrecked my own style, I think, for about a year. Even though I published stuff, I didn't publish as much as I should have, and they aren't going in my portfolio. They're derivative. So I hope that answers your question. Each audience is different. If you did 3 different comedy shows, you might change your act or your words for those 3. And then the next part, you must be able to, just like a poet, you read Robert Frost, you know it's a Robert Frost poem from his style. People should read your stuff and say, that's a Julie story. or that's an Amy story, things like that.
Awesome. Thank you.
Okay.
I have a question here. You've covered some pretty difficult topics such as hazing or addiction. Have you ever felt uncomfortable while working on a story? How do you push through it?
That's a great question. Walking into a room to, okay, there was a young African-American man who died at Morehouse. The mother agreed to meet with me 3 days later. So I went to Riverside in the Bronx, New York, and she couldn't bring herself the day before to go to the funeral. So they had the tape on the computer that we could watch. And I sat with her as she saw her son's funeral at Morehouse. And it was really emotional. And I knew I had to be a journalist, but I lost it when the men and women put their arms around each other, wearing dark glasses or red-eyed and unashamedly crying. And she said, "That's brotherhood. That's sisterhood. That's what Joel wanted." Oh my God. So yes, how did I push through? Not very well. I cried with her, and then try to write the story.
Hey, look, I think it's okay to allow yourself some emotion here when you're writing about emotional things.
You're human.
You're human. I mean, bring that passion into the writing. One of the things that Hank does is, you're interviewing dozens and dozens and dozens of people in this 7,500 word piece. Maybe you're using them all, maybe you're using a fraction of them, but you're picking and choosing the very best. Is that true?
That's true. And maybe I can give you this one. I put it just in case. Let me try to give you the beginning of a story and see if I can make you feel what it's like. Think about this as 3 months of interviewing this woman, plus she gave me her diary. It all came down to this short introduction. The call came in the middle of the night. Eileen Stevens' son was dead. She was alert and numb at once, her flesh no longer part of her. She wanted to hang up. She wanted the caller to stay on the line forever. She wanted to know what had happened and how. But most of all, she wanted the call to be a dream, a very bad dream. But the pain in the caller's voice, the small break in his professional manner revealed the truth, told her the worst had happened. She was ready to bargain with God, the devil, the caller. Take my life, my soul, take me, I've lived. But make it untrue. Take me, not Chuck. But Chuck was dead. She wandered through the house. A gong vibrated between her ears. She eyed the refrigerator. The freezer held the ingredients for chili. Chuck alone and her family loved it. Parents' weekend at Alfred University was approaching, and she had planned on taking him a special meal. She went into his room. In the closet were the boots and skis she'd given him not 2 months earlier. He'd used them only once. She was glad she exceeded the budget to buy them. She could still hear his squeal of joy on Christmas morning. 20, he'd acted like a 4-year-old. His joy was infectious, his hugs genuine. If only she had kept hugging him forever, never let him go. The caller's words roared like a waterfall in her mind. Chuck's probable cause of death was an overdose of alcohol at a party, the dean of students had said. He had repeated that explanation to her husband, Roy, in a later call. But how was that possible? Sure, Chuck drank beers with his buddies, his fellow clammers on nearby Great South Bay, but he never had so many to the best of her knowledge. She wanted to leave immediately, but a winter storm had intensified, adding 4 inches of snow to the 22 already on the ground in Alfred, New York. Flying into an airport within a 90-minute drive of the southern tier was going to be impossible until snowplows could do their work. She contemplated going by car, but her husband convinced her she would have to wait out the night. A Catholic, she spent the long night cradling her husband in her arms, taking comfort in religion. Then the thought struck her. She'd have to ask if someone had summoned a priest to administer last rites, the sacrament her faith promised would permit her son straight into heaven. Little did she know that her boy's spiritual welfare was the last thing on the minds of those who shared his last hours. To the ghastly end, club rights prevailed over last rights and human rights. So, so trying to take you through the book and almost giving you a preview of what it's going to be.
This
Okay.
is your book? Yeah, yeah.
This was this one.
Yeah.
Okay, so you wrote a play called The Broken Pledge. Did you have to get into a different mindset to write a play as opposed to a column? It was different, but I tried to get the audience into the character who was a grandfather, and I took real issues from my family's life. I took my family and my dad, who had watched his sister when she was small, try to catch a puppy in the hayloft and fell down and hit the ground with a crack like an automobile wreck, hit the cement. And so I opened with that to try to get into the tragedy, because that incident changed the father, where he didn't laugh anymore. And the grandfather says, now I know what it's like. Am I going to be the same as my father? And all the way we're wondering if he's going to be at the same. And then at the end, he forgives the fraternity members and goes off to try to save them from the police, to try to get an alternative to sending them to jail. So I hope that answers the question. But it was a different mindset in that people are going to be sitting in the audience. This was an Anne Frank award-winning play at Buffalo State College, and there were people in the audience that were going to have to experience this as I went, different from a column. You put the column out. I got a letter from a guy from the Indianapolis 500, the president today, and now I know how he feels. But when you do the play, because I act, I had to look at the audience as we're out there. It's a great question. Okay. Grace, can you read yours? Is she there? You are very relatable.
Grace, we got Grace here. Let me take it from here. So you're very relatable in every piece I've read. How do you do that? How do you calculate your writing in a way to appeal to a mass audience? I think you addressed that a little bit earlier, this idea of knowing your audience.
Yeah, I think the emotion hits you as you're writing. You know when it's a dud, you know when it's working, and I really have a good audience in my wife, because she is not a native speaker. She's from Poland. And so I read this to her, and if she's not getting something right away, I mark it down and then I rewrite. But I think having someone that you can read through, who you can read your stuff to, not who reads your stuff, but that you can read your stuff to, is very, very useful.
Let me wrap things up here, Hank, because we're coming to the end of our class anyway. Any last questions from anybody? I'll just throw that out.
Yeah, I got one.
Okay.
So out of the pieces that we were given that you wrote, to read in preparation for this, the one that stuck out to me the most was probably the obituary you wrote about the woman who worked at the library. What I liked about it a lot was at the end, well, you started the column by just kind of describing her life, who she was, what she did at the library, what she meant to other people. And then it really kind of took a turn when you had told us how she died. And I liked that a lot. It really stood out to me. So what do you like about that style, about, putting that turn in at the end for something such as an obituary, something that you wouldn't necessarily always see something like that? What do you like about that? And why do you think it works?
That's a great question. And so for me, I think everyone in this town, Union City and just over the border, Darke County, who's over the age of 40, knows that was one of the most horrific murders over here. So what was important to me, to answer your question, was to see her as she was alive. But not to make an angel out of her or something that she wasn't. She was a holy terror. I think those were the words that I used. And that probably, and I didn't say that because I can't get into the mind of the murderer. That resentment came into a fury when he killed her. You know, she was good at her job with the library. She was not necessarily good with people, you know, with the books. But I wanted to make her alive and human. But even though she's alive and human, doesn't mean that we have to like her. And it would be wrong to make her something that she was not. Okay, people were afraid of. Okay, just think of this yourself. The police are at your door to get that doggone library book. You know, what librarian would do that? But she did, and so that for me then got me to the end. I felt that you as a reader are feeling tension, so then I took her to St. Peter's at the very end. You know, it's using hyperbole, some exaggeration, and imagine what she might say at the very end. So then you're turning one more time, and I'm hoping that you wouldn't have guessed that ending, but felt it was natural when you got to it. Does that make sense?
Absolutely, absolutely. Hank, thank you so much for joining us today. I'm going to close things up. I'm going to stop the recording.